Welcome, folks. I'm Kai, the Crafty Kai, and I am super excited today to show you another collection in my Draw With Me series for the Feline Familiar or the Witches Feline Familiar. I have decided to stop at 4 for the moment because leading up to my Etsy shop launch, which I've just been so absorbed with working on the digital art aspect and trying to get some other digital products available too, that I haven't had time as much to concentrate on other items I was working on that are the clay handmade items. So I think I overwhelmed myself, and I needed to take a step back and reevaluate for my October launch date. And it's coming up very quickly, so I had to slow my roll and decide what was the best course of action. And that was part of it, was to kind of split up the launch dates on certain things because I can always update my shop a little later with a few more product items. So that's what I decided to do. Although there's 8 pieces in this Feline Familiar collection, I'm doing 4 for the shop launch. So if you've seen my other Draw With Me series, I've done the Crystal Witch, the Cosmic Witch, the Green Witch, and now I'm doing the Folk Witch. And so the Folk Witch is an interesting one. And this is how I would describe the Folk Witch to me. As I was trying to find all my inspiration pieces here of how to build up this story for the Folk Witches Familiar. And of course, to me, Folk Witch has, the way I understand this practice, is kind of like more of the old fairy tales, very much like Celtic background. So I was really influenced by kind of like the Irish fairy tales and the Scottish fairy tales. And so I really wanted to build the world around that. And so that's where all of my inspiration photos were kind of like the Celtic, Irish, Scottish fairy tales with like the fairies, the gnomes, the elves, and just like the castles and building up that kind of world. And so that kind of gave me the idea for all like my background. How am I going to draw this folk witch, this cat? And the folk witch would be kind of like who you would go to in like those tales of old that you hear as children, like that fairy tale. It would be like the grandma, like the granny vibe. I feel like, where always has a story to tell of the wee folk, and what you would leave out, like you would leave out milk for the wee folk for the morning so that they would have it. You would do some other practices as well. And just like those are the ones that's the one that stands out in my mind, and that's kind of, I've incorporated it as well. But what was interesting is I only started to think of a castle when I looked up. There was an artist on Instagram that I saw. If I can draw this, you can draw this. And I was like, wow, this is so simple, because I never drew a castle. So I did it with like shapes and stuff, like triangles, and like how do I like get the forms of a castle? Because here I'm thinking like of castle from kind of Camelot, like King Arthur and what was it called, King Arthur and the Round Table, I think. And then there's Camelot. And so and then I also started, originally I was just going to put trees, but it was too similar to the Green Witches. So inspired by the old kind of stoneware that you can see in those pictures, that from like ruins of castles that you may find across Ireland and Scotland. So I built up like a half broken down wall of stones here, and then I wanted to make an arch. And throughout this image, you're going to find like little hints of the wee folk here and there, the fairies, the nymphs flying in the flowers and stuff. But using the same stamp that I had used and discovered in the Green Witches video. This time I really want that to be my background, as the mountain views, and kind of like the mountains of the Highlands of Ireland, or Highlands of Scotland, I should say, but then the moors of like Ireland. So it was going to have the water and the mountain with like a castle. And you always see these in like the Disney fairy tales. But going back, because I wanted to look up this this artist, so I make sure I refer which one was it. Oh, here we go. It was like Harrison.how had just like, I bet you can draw this no hassle castle drawing. And I thought that was so cool. Like that, I was like, how simple is that? Okay, so let me try to add that as part of this story, because I did want to add like some sort of, initially I thought of like a witch's cottage. But then this felt much more magical and like that fairy tale world. So I really wanted to build up this, like through that arch, you may see the other side of the magical side, where you may see the what was it, the court of the Seelie, maybe, or the Unseelie and Seelie, if you've heard of like those, I can't remember if the Unseelie and Seelie were part of Irish folk fairy tales or Scottish. This is absolutely all of these stories from when I was a kid. I used to read a lot, and when I was a teenager I would like devour fairy tale and fantasy books and stories, and then I was definitely a daydreamer in class, and I would just be lost in these stories. And I kind of lost that as I got older, and I stopped daydreaming as much about these stories and being lost in them, and I'm just slowly rediscovering them again. I had probably all in my 20s, I was not the most happiest person. Things have changed a lot since I've been in my 30s, and I am finding my peace and my happiness and being content in my life, and part of that is working up to having a small art business and working in my art. And it's just every time I do anything, whether it's drawing on, in my sketchbook, or doing this digital, and especially pottery, because I'm still like that's something it's a growing passion, because there's so much to learn with drawing. It's more accessible too. But I'm building up this castle, and things are really starting to get that story in my head that we have here. Like I said, it's the castle of the Unseelie, or no, this would be the Seelie court, because they are the court of day. And so they would have I just built that up. I tried to do the reflection in the water, and was still working on it and trying to get the water texture. I think it's coming out okay. Like I want it, maybe, I originally thought lake, because I'm like a lake person, but I think this came out more of like ocean style, but that's okay. So all of my ideas were coming from these stories that I read as a kid, and I didn't refresh my memory at all. I just kind of like went with it. It really changed how the original sketch was supposed to be, which is great, because sometimes you build off just like a rough sketch on things, because this is always based, like the first thing I do is the cat, which was I chose the Scottish fold, and then that's kind of where I started building off the Scottish fold. Well, that's, Scottish, Celtic, let's lean into that fairy tale world and build out that character. And I loved how this cat really gave me granny vibes, and then I was going back to what I was saying, it's like the folk witch is that like granny who has all of these remedies, and sometimes people will come if you have mischievous spirits and fairies that are causing mayhem in your world, in your home. You may come to the folk witch to help solve those, and she might have some you know, put salt on windows to protect your home, or things like that. Because also salt does purification. It's always a good medium for that. So, but yeah, that would be kind of like the folk witch. So I built it out was that this storyline and this character would have this gate behind in her witch's cottage, and would have this old stone that looks broken down and overgrown with what did I put? Roses. When I was doing these stones, I was like, I'm like getting that texture of stone again. But I was so happy. I thought it turned out really well with adding the shading to really have those rounded, because it's all like the uneven handmade, like rough stones that would have, like you could see it in the picture over there, that it's broken down and from years and hundreds of years that it has existed. And so this is kind of like a gateway towards the Seelie world and the fairy world. So I really built up as like the aged and broken down, and adding so yeah, it was like overgrown with roses. So the idea is that, you know, with the witches, has the witch cottage or has this gateway in her backyard, but only those who can see through the, how would I say, behind the curtain, or the realm behind it. And so I used this really cool, I found this another stamp that to create the leaf effect, because I was like, how am I going to do this? I don't really want to hand draw each one. And I'm trying to do a style that's a mix between painting and illustration. So kind of like my Cosmic Witch, I did more of a painting style influence, and I've done the other ones more in illustration, and a combo of both. Like, to have these techniques, I really like doing that. But yeah, so I keep going back to my video and trying to describe my story, my character building. But yeah, so this would be the gateway to the other world. So only those who have the sight and who can see beyond would see there is this magical world through this arch, that you would see this pathway filled with wildflowers on the side down a rolling hill towards a castle with the mountains and the moors in the distance. So only those who have the sight would be able to see it. For other those who are passing by, all they would see is an overgrown archway that's been broken down. So then, you know, part of that is on the other side, you sometimes have the fairies who come across and may, you know, cause mischief, or who just, like, they are there and we may not see them. Sometimes you catch them from the corner of your eye of something moving or whatnot, where it's like a nymph, a fairy, or a little garden gnome who's like walking around your garden looking at your spuds. But so for this cat character, like I said, I went with the Scottish fold, which have like their ears. I was reading about them, like their ears naturally born with the pointed, like regular cat ears, and as they mature, their ears curl over. And so I was like, how do I do, like, let me just do tiny ears? And I thought it was so cute how crossed R was, just like, it's like, what are you doing here, human? Like, I always, again, cats feel like they just look down on us. And I did one, I was trying to get the calico coloring, and the facial expression that I drew really gave me like granny vibes. This granny witch has this granny cat. Or maybe the witch is the cat, and it's just, some days you'll see the granny and some days you'll see the granny cat. So is it a familiar or is it the witch? Sometimes I always wonder if it's like familiars, were they witches before, or are they witches who have passed, and so their spirits, like, in part of the, they come back to help others. So anyways, I was kind of going off on that. But I really wanted to have like those blue eyes. Now, normally you see blue eyes in cats with they're like more are white or Siamese cat. It's like I'm not. This is my magical world. I'm gonna make a cat with blue eyes that doesn't represent realistic, because whatever does not. It's just my magical world. And so I did that, and I really think the colors turned out pretty good with the calico style. It was similar a bit to Gandalf cat, which is in the Green Witch. And then for the witch's tool, I incorporated a cauldron, because this witch would probably be brewing away some potions to help with helping with the folk, and generally witches to help. And so there's brewing potions, so she'd probably be brewing something outside with maybe her garden. I initially thought of putting the cat onto like a Scottish, I think it's a Scottish or what do you call it? The plaid. Oh no, I forgot what it's called. Not the kilt, but anyways, I was going to use it, and I was like building up plaid, which is always difficult to draw. I find it never looks great, and trying to get like the wispy ends, but I didn't like it. I thought it drew away from having this like blanket, so I scrapped that idea. But I did have to add, of course, toadstools and mushrooms, because that is part of fairycore, is like having these classically red toadstool mushroom caps. So I kind of added them sporadically through. I just love mushrooms. I have so many. I can't remember for this last time, but I want to do another collection with mushrooms, but I still love cat focused stuff, so it's kind of hard. My brain's like, do we do both? Do we do one or another? I just incorporate in both in this one. So this one, I also added some background details with like the milk in a saucer pan, whether it's for the cat or for the fairy folk. I thought that was fun to put a little glass, try to do a glass bottle, but also I'm like, because of my pottery ceramics, I'm like, I try to do ceramic details as well in my drawings. And so yeah, if you ever have this site, you may see these little tiny fairy folk who may be playing and dancing upon the toadstool mushrooms in your garden, and it definitely would be in the folk witch's garden. They would be having a joyful time, and the cat would be just there and settling and watching as the normal humans walk by, and not kind of like guarding this gateway to ensure that only the right folk can go through, but also to protect that none of those from the NC League Court can come through. I also, when I was doing this garden gnome, I really like how his beard and hair turned out, and just like was walking in the background with his little cane and his little stick just going through. And then the last fairy that I'm adding is kind of like a sprite that would fly through like the flowers. I try to get it so this one would match the roses that I drew below. So it's either this little fairies like fluttering around into that world. So this is the complete image for my folk witch feline familiar. I kind of had the name Agatha for this cat. When is it like Granny Agatha? That kind of gives you the vibes, but let me know in the comments below, what would you name this cat familiar? How do you think of this story of building up this character world? Have you heard of if you do have, what are your facts and knowledge of the Irish and Scottish Celtic fairy tale world? I'd love to hear about it. But this print will be available on my October launch, so please stay tuned. If you'd like to keep up to date for when my shop launches, you can follow me on Instagram, the Crafty Kai, or on my MailChimp email subscriber list. I will be just emailing out for shop launches. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please, if you have the chance, drop some wisdom, drop some words of wisdom or kindness down below. I would greatly appreciate that. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.